On one fateful day, June 21st, 2018, I scheduled my video, Why Yandere-dev is an Awful Developer, a video analyzing the development of Yandere Simulator created by Alex Mahan, aka yandere-dev, and suggested ideas that could improve the overall quality of the game. Honestly, I thought when I made my original video that it would have been the first and only time I would have to discuss Yandere-dev and Yandere Simulator. I expected the situation to boil over, and Yandere would remain stubborn and ride off into the sunset. But what actually happened was the downfall of a video game's development, the destruction of a man's reputation, and the rise of his ego, as he tries to manipulate the people and control the narrative. So, allow me to pick up where I last left off, explain what has happened in the past 2 years, and analyze how Yandere-dev is manipulating those around him, as well as adding a little bit on the side. In the last video, I told you why. In this video, I'm going to tell you how he's fallen from grace and become a public laughingstock. It's no longer about the game, because it's much bigger than that now. It's about the man himself who clings on to it like his life depends on it, mainly because it does. But before we talk about the recent news, we gotta take it from the top. So, let's jump into it. I'm lactose intolerant. I personally categorize the downfall of Yandere Simulator into two different eras. The first era, the Uprising as I have coined, was characterized by a revolt led by now former fans of the project, who have become increasingly upset with its lackluster development. Videos that have been treated as gospel within the critical community were posted around this time, that being Kappa Kaiju's original video and Thaf9's video, who are frequently cited as being some of the best videos about the subject. Many others created videos on the subject and achieved great success, such as BK Girl aka Weebaloo, Manga Kamen, Dylan Thomas, and Cup Noodle Doodle. Even my original video was a big hit and ended up actually getting more views than most of these videos. Whoops. Things came to a head when Rommel published his catastrophic expose on Alex Mahan. His 2-hour-long video details many of the less than savory things Alex has gotten himself wrapped into, particularly during the time he went under the alias Ava Zeffin. This video exposed a lot of information that will become the basis for many future videos that would criticize Alex. In particular, the video exposed Alex's childish behavior towards Mike Z after he took a look at the code of Alex's lunar scythe. Alex's gross, violent sentiments towards his own parents, his legally questionable reading habits, and his history with the website 4chan. Things weren't looking good for Alex, with a large percentage of his fanbase becoming incredibly critical of him. But if you listen to some of his former fans, he could have possibly... Okay, enough joking on that point, we know exactly what happened. Yandere-dev met some of these videos critical of him with copyright takedowns, which has been speculated to be the reason why Rommel's video was taken down. Alex felt compelled to respond to the situation and created the now infamous Hate and Shame video, which somehow has a nice rating despite it being an absolute dumpster fire. My biggest issue with it is the skewed perspective it has, lumping in harassers, detractors, critics, and simply those who speak ill of him into one camp he calls the Gremlins. Which is a name I hate because those who harass him are just trolls. But he's trying to establish like there's some sort of difference between the two, but no, there isn't. However, he then goes on to only discuss the actions of the harassers. So where do people like Kappa Kaiju and Thaf9 fit in? Or where do I fit in? I was more critical of the game's artistic side and offered advice. What about your former fans that simply want you to code the game better? He literally addresses none of the perspectives, leading me to believe that he sees us all as gremlins. That's definitely how his fans sees us. Also, side note, you posting a link to this video in one of my comment sections doesn't make me magically disregard what I've said in my videos. I'm not easy to manipulate, and I think for myself, unlike most. Shocking, I know. Another big issue is how Alex is clearly manipulating his young, impressionable audience by only portraying himself as a victim and assumes no fault of his own, while portraying the Gremlins as evil pricks with no redeeming qualities. He establishes the situation in very black and white terms, so it's easily digestible for his audience and doesn't hurt their little brains.
When you make your characters less human, you suck out the humanity, meaning people are less likely to see what they can become.
Daddy, could that be me?
No, kiddo. He's evil. You're good.
Oh, okay.
Man, I'm glad I'm not as evil as that guy.
Yeah.
He also portrays channels like mine as greedy douchebags who only have made our videos for the money. He portrays us as evil and him as noble. The presentation of the video also has a big hand in manipulating the audience. The video features no music to put emphasis on what Alex is saying. He repeats the phrase, "Imagine yourself in the following situation," to gain sympathy from the viewer. It establishes a link between him and the viewer because if the viewer understands the pain, they would be more likely to support him. The icing on the cake is the female protagonist who is present during most of the video and is of the main focus, making the viewer see the victim as a small, cute, defenseless anime girl who was unfairly targeted, rather than this guy whose fans have lost faith in him due to his own volition. The fact that he portrays himself as an anime boy solidifies this. I know he tried to debunk this, citing his questionably large female fan base, but that doesn't mean that the choice didn't have a direct result. Whether you intentionally tried to get sympathy or not, you still ended up receiving it through this. I doubt he would receive nearly the same amount of support if he had made one of those dumb facecam YouTuber apology videos. The biggest issue, by far, is, get this, he doesn't actually address any of the criticisms levied against the Yandere simulator. He briefly touches on it when he states,
or why you chose to use if-else instead of switch case,
but doesn't actually make any statement on the matter. He just says, yeah, I use else if, what of it? Without realizing that doing so tanks the game's performance. He tries to make it seem as if it's equivalent to a chef using margarine instead of butter, or a painter using oil paints instead of acrylics, but the analogy doesn't match. A better analogy would be if instead of using fans or water cooling to cool down a computer, you just put bags of ice inside the case. I mean, I think it gets the job done, but not well in any capacity. After the release of the hate and shame video, conversation about Alex had one last big hurrah before fizzling out. Public favor had waned for Alex, and he was only left with his most die-hard supporters. What followed was a lull period where conversation about Yandere Simulator and its creator were at an all-time low. The project felt like that of a distant memory, an idea that would never be. This lull period lasted for a majority of 2019, until a little seed that had been planted during the Uprising era began to blossom. On June 19th, 2018, YouTube users Toaddan and Mayonaka posted videos of them posting an innocuous image of yandere-dev looking at a monitor and smiling on the Yandere Simulator Discord. Within minutes, he was banned for the light offense. Nothing much came of these videos initially, but it was ahead of its time and became the basis for what would start a new era, the mockery. The mockery was born from a new resurgence in memes, one half being a new wave of Discord-banned speedruns, the others being ones depicting yandere-dev being asked if he was coding, to which he presumably lies and says yes, then winks at the viewer. These memes breathed new life into the discussion and single-handedly revitalized the discussion surrounding yandere-dev, verifying the old theory by Dr. Emperor Lemon that memes hold power. These memes were unique, however, in that they didn't simply die, but had momentum behind them, with new memes being born from these roots, such as the young yandere-dev face, which evolved into the meme of his face being animated to speak and sing along to videos. These memes spread like wildfire, being practically inescapable on virtually every social media site. The memes were a convenient, compact way of sharing the message that Alex was bad at programming and that he couldn't take criticism or mockery from others, the two biggest critiques levied against him. However, all the memes pale in comparison to the most prevalent one.
Dear pesky plumbers, the Koopalings and I have taken over the Mushroom Kingdom.
During the mockery era, an old video of Alex congratulating a user for successfully hacking Warcraft 3 was re-uploaded. The video itself was a perfect mix of dialogue, production values, shot composition, creating an intriguing, memorable video. But the most important part was the goblet full of milk, dubbed the cum chalice. Going back to Emp Lemon, he claimed that slogans such as FDR's "the only thing we have to fear is fear itself" were memes themselves and held a lot of power within the human condition, and this meme is further proof of that. Consume the cum chalice became a war cry akin to Viva la Revolution, as it established a solidarity between those that disliked Alex and all want to see him improve in some way. It added a new dynamic to the situation. Now suddenly he became the talk of the town, and for all the wrong reasons, and people went from wanting change to losing all hope. Yandere-dev mostly kept silent during the beginning of the era, simply allowing the banning of those who posted such memes into his server, but with the rise of the memes came also a rise in harassment. Yandere-dev isn't a very strong guy, and he never portrays himself as such, so many see him as an easy target for harassment. I personally find it disgusting some of the things that people have done towards Alex, and I condemn it to no end. No matter your stance on the situation, he doesn't deserve this type of inhumane harassment, and really, no one does on the internet. I also don't support those who constantly seek the link to his server just so that they can post a meme and get banned. I get that it's innocent fun that really doesn't hurt anyone, and I've done it before myself with getting Steve Shives to block me on Twitter. But in general, doing so makes people like us look like a senseless hate mob who spam the server for sick kicks. It only reinforces Alex's victim complex. Eventually, Alex got sick of all the harassment, and it drove him to take drastic measures. He thought that he knew the best course of action to win back the internet's favor, but he was sorely mistaken. Concerns were raised after he was interviewed, in which he was asked a variety of questions relating to his experiences online. When asked why he was quick to dismiss the videos made by The Right Opinion, Thaf9, and Kappa Kaiju, he basically gave a non-response stating, "It is extremely unethical to publicly humiliate someone in front of millions of viewers," confirming to us that he only sees people like the aforementioned in the same way as those who harass him, lumping us all in as gremlins, as many have feared. But soon, Alex would go on the attack. His first plan of attack was silencing those who mocked him in places such as his Discord servers, YouTube channel, and subreddit. He claims he did it to stop the spread of misinformation, but that's not how that works. I'm assuming he's taking the defamation is illegal position when it comes to free speech, which is perfectly fine, but censorship isn't the means to curb this. Again, he claims that it isn't censorship, but it definitely is. Just because the idea is noble doesn't make it any different. You are still silencing them and giving vague reasons for doing so. If you wanted a more effective way of getting them to stop believing what you claim to be lies, then you should simply link to your debunk page in the response, as I feel it does clear up many misconceptions that even I had. It would be 10 times more effective than this totalitarian option you've chosen, which only fans the flames and gives you the reputation of hating criticism. Alex's second form of retaliation came in the form of his personal discussion with the developer of Watashi no Mono and Dr. Ipis. Apis? Something like that. Developer of Love Letter My True Feelings. The former is an interesting case because it centers around the idea that the project of Watashi no Mono is actually fake and is simply a publicity stunt of some sort to harm Yandere-dev's reputation. In his own words, he claims that the game itself doesn't actually exist and is only footage, which I interpret as meaning that it's either animation or a very primitive gameplay build. Now, is this true? I haven't got a clue, and it's extremely unlikely someone would go out of their way to create an entire animated teaser simply to spite Alex. I believe he greatly overestimates those who dislike him, believing that they would go through any ridiculous lengths just to mess with him. And yes, while there are people that would go out of their way to do so, they wouldn't do anything, and people make memes based on him in order to make people laugh, which is the payoff for their work. This can also be applied to Watashi no Mono, with the developer wanting to create a game to surpass Yandere Simulator and deliver on the experience in ways the original fails, and that's not a bad thing. Lord knows I have ideas for spiritual successors to series that have been long dormant. But Alex takes this information very personally, mainly because people cite Watashi no Mono as a better Yandere Simulator, and is convinced that the game's existence harms Alex and convinces people to stop supporting him. That assumption is incorrect, but whatever. My main issue is the exchange between WNM's developer and Alex is that Alex is clearly motivated by greed, stating that, "What I do know is that people feel justified in attacking me, or withdraw financial support from me because they believe WNM is proof that I could be doing my job faster." This exposes the hidden motive behind this interaction. On the surface, it seems like he's only doing this because he thinks that getting WNM cancelled will ease up on the harassment levied against him, which he would be sorely mistaken and would only exacerbate the issue. But his true motive lies in not wanting to go back to working a regular 9-to-5 job. In the Patreon section of his debunk page, he states that, "If I can make at least $1,000 per month on Patreon, I will make Yandere Sim my full-time job." And he is currently tiptoeing that threshold so hard it ain't funny. I presume that he expects that the existence of Watashi no Mono will scare off one of his whales and cause him to lose a big chunk of monthly income. His fear is justified, but judging by his rhetoric, he believes that his fans owe him the support. Whether he meant financially support as in YouTube revenue or Twitch donations, I'm unsure, but it heavily implies both Twitch donations, subscriptions, as well as Patreon pledges, all of which are not things that yandere-dev supporters have any obligation to maintain. They do not have to give any money so that you can work full time for the game. They're offering you the money to do so solely out of the kindness of their heart, and I would expect someone like him to meet this with gratitude. I mean, other YouTubers and public figures don't feel so threatened when someone pulls their money from their Patreon, except Onision and politicians, that is. Apparently he was told by a former partner of the project that it was fake, but seeing as how gameplay builds have been released, that's fake. That was fake news. Which I find fitting that yandere-dev would actually fall for something like that, because it feels more like he used this little tidbit as an excuse for what he did, rather than him wanting to actually know about the game and actually know if it's a fake or not. The conversation between Alex and Dr. Ipis has also been a point of controversy for many, and for good reason. In an exchange between Alex and the doctor, he expresses how he believes Love Letter has increased harassment flung his way, and critiques the project's use of Yandere Simulator's assets. In the same breath, he mentions how the development of Love Letter severely devalues that of Yansim, and states, "If the cost of Yandere Simulator was ending a person's life, I'd cancel development." This phrase is so short, so quick, but it holds immense power within the conversation. Let's discuss the elephant in the room, the suicide threat. In his debunk page, he claims that he wasn't actually threatening to kill himself as a result of Love Letter, but simply implied that it would end his career. What's the difference? I mean, yeah, technically you would be alive, but you seem to imply that as a result of Love Letter being released, your project would die immediately, all hype would be completely stopped, people would stop financially supporting you, and the project you've been working on for the past 6 years would be stolen right underneath your feet. That seems to be exactly what you're implying, right? After all, it definitely feels like you're trying to retcon in retrospect what you implied, rather than it actually being implied through the Discord messages. Also, whether or not you implied suicide or not, what matters is that the other party saw it as that. Yandere-dev seems to have this odd idea that he can say whatever to someone, and so long as he claims he implied something different than the popular narrative, that it absolves him completely of criticism or fault. That isn't how that works, especially when you're talking to someone privately. When you speak to someone privately, especially someone as popular as you would want your rhetoric to be concise and easy to understand so the other party doesn't misconstrue your intentions. But the wording of the sentence heavily implies the popular narrative. After all, what does ending a person's life supposed to mean in most contexts? I also like how he tried to pull a fast one on us by trying to say, if somehow Yandere Simulator's development risked someone's life, he would stop development completely. Are you serious? Give me a fucking break, dude. You of all people would stop the development of a game you've been working on for the past 6 years because someone thinks that because of its development and existence, it harms their life and they would die, or just their life would end because of it? Give me a fucking break, dude. You cannot be serious. If someone legitimately told me that if my YouTube channel or a project I was working on risked their life, I would tell them, you're delusional, you need help, please seek help. Which is coincidentally what people have been telling yandere-dev as of late. Listen, I know you want to portray yourself as a hero, but both of us know damn well you would not stop development of Yandere Simulator if it risked someone's life somehow. Because you benefit so greatly from the game and you've been working on it for such a long time that it would be completely moronic for you to do so. Alex's third and most recent attack has been one where he has targeted a small YouTuber named The Game Sleuth. The Game Sleuth was a pretty small YouTube channel that hosts whatever content he felt like. My favorite. During the Uprising era, he posted a series of videos compiling critiques from other videos made during the time, along with adding a dash of memes and a pinch of yandere-dev's videos for context. Personally, I'm not a fan of this type of content. I'd much rather watch each video individually, but hey, he's allowed to do whatever. I don't care. Yandere-dev soon aimed his sights towards his channel, feeling that the videos he made contributed greatly towards his harassment. Now, he could have gone about this a couple of different ways. He could have talked to the Game Sleuth directly and maybe hashed it out in the emails, or he could have, of course, gone with the nuclear option, which, guess what he chose. On July 24th, 2020, the Game Sleuth uploaded a video clarifying what had exactly happened. Alex had copyright struck 2 of the Game Sleuth's videos, claiming he did so because he believed the videos violated copyright by not being transformative enough. In addition, he also talked to Alex and removed more of his videos made about yandere-dev in the hopes that Alex would stop striking his videos. After all, if he got 3 strikes, his entire channel would be terminated. Now this is funny because yandere-dev claims that he took down the videos because they harmed copyright law and they weren't transformative enough. But this is actually contradictory to the actual videos themselves. Firstly, he shouldn't have struck down the videos regardless if he was in the right to or not. He's a YouTuber as well, and I expected some sort of empathy from a brother in arms who is a victim of the content ID system like the rest of us. Hell, you couldn't even stream Persona 5 online without it being taken down. Did he forget about that, or chose to go full Daddy Derek mode? Copyright strikes are severe punishments that are only really understood by other YouTubers. Regardless of such, were the videos actually transformative or not? Well, luckily for me, I actually have a copy of a couple of the videos. I have the first real yandere-dev video because I was aware of Alex's habit of taking these videos down, and I have the 4th one because I'm in it and I'm a conceited bitch. And honestly, the segments featuring yandere-dev are handled pretty well in my opinion, being quick and to the point, while also being transformative by adding memes and text in between certain clips in response to something that Alex says. It's not on the level of something like a YouTube poop by any means, but it's not lazy, far from it in fact. Honestly, I think Dylan Thomas would have had a better case for claiming the 4th video, as it features large, long chunks of his video unedited. So if he really wanted to, he could have claimed the video and made a little extra dough off of it and be totally in the right. But again, he's not a douchebag and understands how scummy that is. At least I'm hoping he does. I'm honestly confused as to why he targeted the Game Sleuth specifically rather than a larger target. While his videos seemed pretty popular and I think he had a larger subscriber base than people like me or Weebaloo, he isn't as big as someone like Manga Common or even Dylan Thomas. Clearly, Alex wasn't going to target someone like Thaf9 or Kappa Kaiju because they're massive channels compared to us, and I guess he didn't target me or Manga Common because we have popular mutuals, I'm guessing? It's clear he chose the Game Sleuth probably because he had a pretty laid-back channel and thought he didn't have the reach to make a large controversy over it. After Game Sleuth's video went public, the story spread rapidly and news of yandere-dev's scummy behavior came to light, and the situation picked up even more momentum. It's crazy, everything he does to try and get people to stop talking about him always has the inverse effect, and I'm seriously confused as to if this is intentional somehow, or if he's literally that brain dead. After all this publicity sinks his reputation farther and farther. And that's where we are today. Yandere-dev is trying to use brute force and trying to control the narrative so that he can get people to do what he wants, so that people will stop talking about him and critiquing him and harassing him when ironically his actions have the adverse effect. It's speculated that he's going to make a sequel to Hate and Shame, and I could have waited until then, but I am simply not strong enough. I really think that Alex is a victim of circumstance. Really, he never asked to get famous off of his game, and if history was different, he probably would have kept the game as a side hobby and he would have been better for it. I think his lack of experience in leadership is evident, especially with how he handles his fan base. Despite him interacting with his fans always leading him to being bitten in the ass, he continuously tries to do so and connect with his fan base when it clearly is making his life worse. This section of his debunk page highlights his inability to handle his own fanbase effectively. Upon initially learning of his supporters lampooning a critic of his, he was thrilled. "Sounds like karma," he exclaimed. No! That is an awful way of responding to such news like that. Two wrongs do not make a right, and if someone is spewing shit about you, them being attacked is not okay. Firstly, they're simply expressing their freedom of speech, being critical of you. So long as they aren't publishing sensitive material such as doxes, it's fine for them to say whatever. There will always be people out there who will dislike you, especially on the internet. There could even be someone who dislikes you for dumb reasons, like they don't like your shoes or t-shirt. But whatever. More importantly, however, if someone who dislikes you is attacked for their beliefs, that only further cements their disdain, which turns into full-on hatred as a result. You effectively turn people who would mildly dislike you into full-on haters. They are simply given more ammunition for their hatred, citing your toxic fanbase as a legitimate, justified reason for it. You cannot dismantle toxicity and ignorance with the same thing, but can only eradicate it through acceptance and learning. Alex tries using his harassment as justification for his beliefs, but it doesn't justify his feelings. With attention to his game being suddenly thrust onto him, I definitely think it has permanently destroyed the game in a matter that is irreparable. With people suddenly being interested in the game, he felt the need to constantly update the game, at least monthly, which he also expressed on his debunk page. But that's the problem. Rather than mapping out how he wanted the game to take shape by establishing a set of mechanics that all enhance the gameplay and fleshing it out to make it something great, he instead added as he went along, creating an aimless sense of direction which bled into stuff such as the Easter eggs. Yandere Simulator is a game without a clear, solid identity aside from an anime game about killing, and a game PewDiePie played, both of which can easily define other games as well. Alex Mahan, yandere-dev, was once a well-respected member of the indie game scene and had the potential to go down in history as one of the greats, alongside Toby Fox and Scott Cawthon, who all revolutionized their respective genres. But instead, because he was unequipped to handle such a large fanbase being practically given to him all at once, he was crushed beneath its weight. Yandere-dev was once a name that meant something that was to be respected. But now when you type it into Google, you are not met with a powerful figure, but rather, a laughingstock. So that was my video on yandere-dev, laying out a pretty clear timeline of events that have led to where he is today, as well as analyzing his recent actions, and how he's chosen them to try and control what people say about him. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun making it, despite it being almost 8 AM as I wrote this script, and I didn't sleep yet. Also, if you're into other content related to this topic, I made a video where I read comments from my original video, so feel free to check those out. Thank you for following the development of this fracture on my cranium.